Now, I can see Jacob Rees Mogg over there. He's just talking to Steve. Steve is the guy who you will have seen on College Green over the years, who is not a supporter of Boris Johnson and was not a supporter of Brexit. And Mr Rees Mogg is just walking over now. So, Mr Rees Mogg, he's being... Yeah. So, bear with us. We are... Hello, Mr Rees Mogg. Thank you very much for talking to us. We're just going to get a microphone on you. Brexit Opportunities Minister, thank you for talking to us on BBC News and BBC World. What do you think of the fact that 15% of your party want Boris Johnson out?
Well, I think most of the time you'd find 15% of most parties who aren't fully aligned with the leader. It means that 85% or thereabouts haven't put letters in. So I think one shouldn't read too much into reaching that relatively low hurdle.
Really?
Really?
Why?
15% leaves 85% on the other side of the equation.
It leads to a no confidence vote in the Prime Minister tonight. And you will know what happens when leaders of your party who are Prime Ministers have no confidence votes. They don't usually last very long, even if they win.
But that's more coincidence than causality, that Theresa May indeed won her confidence vote.
And yet you called for her to resign after she won it.
But more importantly, she lost by the largest vote margin in history, a vote in the House of Commons. Theresa May couldn't command the House of Commons. The Prime Minister has a majority of 80. That, I think, is a very important difference.
Right. If Boris Johnson wins, his authority, even if Boris Johnson wins, which I'm assuming you'll expect.
I expect he will win, yes.
Yes. By what sort of margin?
I don't know, but one is enough. I hope every Conservative
One
MP...
is enough?
I hope every Conservative MP will vote for him. But this is a democracy. In a democracy, if you win by one vote, you have won.
Are you seriously saying if he wins by one vote, his authority will be intact and he will be able to continue as leader of your party and Prime Minister?
Yes.
So when Theresa May won 2/3 of the Conservative Party in her no confidence vote, you called for her to resign.
I did, and everyone said to me that I was wrong. Friend and non-friend alike. A former Chief Whip said to me that in all the campaign I'd had at that period, that was my greatest mistake, because in a democracy one is enough. And so I learned from my mistakes.
Really? You are saying that with a straight face?
I'm saying it with a straight face, because I mean it. I regretted what I said at that point. I thought it was both wrong democratically and ungenerous.
Right. So if Boris Johnson wins by one vote, he can carry on with his authority intact?
He has a very important mandate from the British people, who gave him a majority of 80. And to pretend that the election result in 2019 was not about Boris Johnson's leadership is, I think, fanciful. I think a mandate from the British people cannot be taken away from a Prime Minister lightly, and therefore can only be taken away in accordance with the rules under which he operates. And by those rules, one is enough.
Are you still friends with Andrea Leadsom?
Yes, of course I am.
Right. You must have been worried when she said last week, unacceptable failings of leadership that cannot be tolerated and are the responsibility of the Prime Minister.
One doesn't agree with everything that one's friends say. I mean, I'm friendly with some members of the SNP as well, some of whom I hold in very high
both big Boris Johnson backers, both big Brexit supporters.
Well, I'm not sure, no. Andrea, I think, stood for leadership herself. I think Andrea was a big Leadsom backer in the early stage of leadership contest last time round. Isn't that right?
I think you
she
might
did
be right.
stand,
Yes.
didn't she?
Yes, she did.
So
Briefly.
she isn't an early Boris backer, whereas, dare I say, I've been supporting him for quite a long time.
Right, OK. What mood is Mr Johnson in today?
Well, I haven't actually spoken to him this morning. I think he's had other people he needs to speak to as a matter of greater priority.
Right, as in your colleagues. Is he ringing them up and saying, please vote for me?
the President of Ukraine, who I believe he was speking to earlier on today.
Right, OK. And do you know anything about that conversation? I mean,
I
obviously,
don't, no.
the UK is sending long-range missiles.
I don't have either the ability or the right to eavesdrop on the Prime Minister's conversations with other world leaders.
That's fair enough. But do you think Number 10 are bullish about this? What's your feeling as a member of his top team?
Well, I'm a member of his team and very supportive of him. I wouldn't promote myself unduly. Look, all elections have to be campaigned for properly and effectively. I'm very optimistic about the result, but you have to encourage people to turn out and vote. So, one's got to get this balance right.
How are you encouraging people to turn out and vote for Boris Johnson?
Well, I point to the mandate that he's got and his success as a leader. I also think that without Boris Johnson, Brexit will not be delivered. So it is in the Remainer interest, as Steve Bray, your great friend who always shouts when we're out here, is campaigning to get rid of Boris Johnson. Why? To stop Brexit. What did Tobias Ellwood say? Let's go back into the single market to stop Brexit. So the people who don't like Brexit don't like Boris Johnson.
Andrea Leadsom doesn't like Brexit?
Not all of them. I didn't say exclusively.
Right, OK. You can't pretend this is anything to do with Brexit.
Not only do I think it is not a pretence to say this, I think it is what underlies a significant number of people involved. The big figures, chairman of select committees who have come out, and Tobias Ellwood has put his head above the parapet most clearly.
There's one. You can name one.
I can name others actually, but you know who they are as well as I do. And you can name them, but it's better to leave the naming to journalists rather than to do it myself. But we can certainly name Jeremy Hunt now, who didn't want to leave the European Union. So you've got people who are pro the European Union, who are campaigning to get rid of the Prime Minister. I think it's perfectly reasonable to join the dots.
Oh, come on, that is a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's not a conspiracy theory. They're not conspiring, it's what they believe.
Yes.
They're just like Steve Bray.
But Brexit...
They just don't have the megaphone or a stronger voice.
Brexit has been delivered, you would argue, although you now want to rip up the withdrawal deal because of the border down the Irish Sea. So Brexit is over there.
No, there's a lot still to do. This is what I'm doing. Why is there a Minister for Brexit Opportunities? You may well ask. And that is
because you've got to sort out the Irish border question down the sea.
No, that's been done by the Foreign Office, actually. It's to ensure that the freedoms we now have are used. So we've got the freedoms, but we're not using them. That's why Tobias Ellwood could call for us to go back into the single market, because we haven't yet used enough of our freedoms, and that must be our priority, and indeed is legislatively.
55% of conservative voters across the country, according to JLP Partners, do not trust Boris Johnson. That must be alarming.
Polls taken in mid-term are very often not flattering to the party of government.
Conservative voters, this is?
Even from Conservative voters. The same was true in the 1980s of Margaret Thatcher on different issues, that people didn't like her tone or whatever it was. Parties in mid-term often go through schools of unpopularity. If you were to believe the polls, Ed Miliband would have become Prime Minister in 2015. I seem to remember he didn't. It's
about Boris Johnson, though. It's about his character, and that seems to be something that you're in denial about.
No, I don't think I am. I think he has a very ebullient and charismatic character that has a great appeal to some people, but it also has always annoyed some others. The Po-Faced Brigade have never liked him. 55%
of Conservative voters don't believe he's trustworthy.
Are they
the Po-Faced Brigade?
Up to a point, Lord Copper. You can find polls to say all sorts of things. You've got to be very careful about polling. You need more detail on who was asked, when they were asked, what was the question, how was it phrased. The Prime Ministers, as I say, in mid-term are often not at their most popular, indeed almost invariably.
So, after tonight, what happens?
Tomorrow comes, and tomorrow's another day.
How are you going to be able to draw a line under this when you've got the Privileges Committee report coming in the autumn? Once
this happens, there will have been the vote, and that closes down the issue.
It didn't after Theresa May, did it?
That's because she didn't have a majority in the House of Commons, and because she had to try and get a withdrawal agreement through, which she couldn't get through. So it was a very different political circumstance.
Okay. What would you say to those Conservative MPs who are considering voting against Boris Johnson this evening? What's your appeal to them?
I would remind them that they got elected by supporting Boris Johnson. I would remind them of the commitment to the electorate to deliver Brexit. I would remind them of the vaccine rollout that the Prime Minister delivered for us, and our economy opened sooner than any other comparable economy. And I would remind them of the leadership the Prime Minister has shown in relation to Ukraine. And I would then further remind them of the steps he's taking to deal with the cost of living problem. The Prime Minister is a Prime Minister who gets the big issues right. And are they really fussing over whether or not there was a birthday cake?
You know it's not to do with a birthday cake. Please don't pretend it's about a birthday cake.
Then what is it about?
Well, as those Conservative voters say, it's about whether they feel they can believe Boris Johnson, and they don't feel he is trustworthy.
It is clearly about a birthday cake. None of this was happening until there was a fuss over a birthday cake. It seems to me to be the most trivial reason for having a vote of confidence in a great Prime Minister. I'm unfortunately being waved at behind your back. Will you excuse me, because I'm meant to be going to speak to somebody else? I apologise for cutting off like this.
Okay.
Is that all right? I am sorry.
Is that somebody who works with you?
Yes, and he's been making signs behind my back for some minutes, and I have been nobly ignoring them, but I better. Thank you very much.
Thank you for talking to us. Thank you, Brexit Opportunities Minister. Jacob Rees Mogg. I'm going to try and read some messages from you, so bear with me because I'm now going on Twitter to see. I'm asking you as voters right around the country, wherever you are, what do you think about the fact that there is a no confidence vote in the Prime Minister tonight? And here are some of your messages. Right, Andrew says it's essentially entertainment. The political system that produced Boris Johnson will remain unchanged. The root cause of the problem will not be addressed by offering him up as a sacrificial lamb, though it may make quite a lot of people feel good for a short time. Neil says it's not a surprise, and if the Conservatives follow the way they have done in the past, i.e. with Theresa May, etc., regardless of the outcome, Boris Johnson will be gone within weeks and months. Kay says the Jubilee celebrated a long period of time, a stable head of state with a clear succession in place, whereas today in Parliament, and Fran says we need to have the conversation, but I think he may well win narrowly. In my opinion, it's because there is no one else in the Conservative Party who wants the job. They're all desperate to hold on to their positions, and they know that the mess left by Johnson cannot be fixed before a general election.